Today, we have a story about a man whose cheating wife had 5 affair partners. Well then, enjoy. Hello. Please allow me to seek your advice. I don't know what to do or how to handle this situation. I'm almost 40 years old and run my own tutoring business. My wife is in her mid-20s and is a stay-at-home mom. We've been married for 2.5 years and have 1 daughter. I've already decided to divorce her. There are currently 4 known affair partners, so I'll skip the details. Around New Year's, my sister-in-law said to me, my sister might be cheating, so I hired a private investigator. It seems she had physical relationships with multiple men. When I said I wanted to deposit more money into our mortgage account to reduce the monthly payments, and asked for the ATM card, she refused to hand it over, saying the current arrangement was fine. I already knew she was cheating, so I went to the bank to check the transaction history for the past year. I found 3 unexplained withdrawals totaling around $80,000. Even excluding those, the balance seemed to be off, so there's a possibility she withdrew large sums before that as well. During the holiday, I was planning to take our daughter for a routine checkup and do a DNA test at the same time. But before that, I found out her blood type cannot be produced by me and my wife. For now, my wife doesn't know yet that I hired a private investigator or checked the bank balance. Please advise me on what I should do and what I shouldn't, in order to have an advantageous divorce. $80,000 in a year. The total embezzlement would be probably over $100,000. Getting divorced should be easy, but recovering the money will be tough. That money was for funding the second branch school opening next April, so I need to get it back or the plans will get derailed. An age gap couple, huh? The fact she tricked you about the baby makes it seem like she was after money from the start. Now I come to think of it, I should have questioned why a young, beautiful woman like my wife would marry a fat, middle-aged man like me. It was probably for money, but I never considered that at the time. Until you have solid evidence, don't let your wife suspect anything. Endure it until then and absolutely do not resort to violence. If you're determined to divorce, start looking for a lawyer now. One specializing in divorce. As a business owner, you should have some contacts. More than anything, get a clear picture of where that money went. When you make your move, do it swiftly and decisively, without giving the other side a chance to get their act together. I've already consulted with a divorce lawyer. Since we've been married for less than 3 years, I was told I can't get that much alimony. After hearing my story, the lawyer advised me that she might try to drag things out. So I need to be prepared for a drawn-out process and not lose heart. For now, the plan is no asset division, $20,000 in alimony, and demanding the return of the embezzled money. We're planning to demand $30,000 from each affair partners, and $50,000 from the biological father of our daughter, if he's identified. The rest is up to the lawyer. Time the demands to the involved parties to coincide with informing the parents and relatives. And send the wife back to her parents. It would be great if the affair partners she gave money to could be pursued for fraud. The unexplained withdrawals total around $120,000 so far. I'm going to comb through the details, so I don't know the final amount yet. It's been a while since we've seen such an unprecedented, outrageous case. Hang in there, we've got your back. And then, the next day, Tuesday. Hello. Thank you for all the advice. My wife went on a trip. I sent her off on a trip with her mother, using Mother's Day as an excuse to thoroughly search the house. She's coming back on Friday. I want to get everything sorted out by then and settle things over the weekend. The only ones who know about this are my sister-in-law who pointed out the cheating, my younger brother, and his wife. My daughter is being cared for by my brother's wife who knows the situation. I think I need to express my gratitude to them after this turmoil is over. My in-laws' family situation is a bit complicated. My father-in-law and mother-in-law are in a second marriage, my sister-in-law is my father-in-law's daughter from a previous marriage. And my wife is my mother-in-law's daughter from her previous marriage. My sister-in-law was my student, so I met my wife through my sister-in-law. Now, if my wife and I divorce and she has to pay alimony, their family will be left without money and there's a possibility my sister-in-law will have to quit college. She told me, I knew about the affair but couldn't tell you. However, since early fall, I was consumed with guilt and couldn't focus on anything. so I told you out of guilt. So yesterday, I searched through the house, but interestingly, I couldn't find the ATM card in my name. My wife probably took it with her when she left. However, I found a bank statement in my wife's name showing a balance of $50,000. Cross-referencing with the statement I got from the bank, on the days large sums were withdrawn from my account. Some of them were deposited into hers. So this is probably part of the unaccounted for money. I've been digging around, and if anything turns up, I'll report to you. Any further advice would be appreciated. For now, you need to clearly track the flow of the missing money. Normally, pre-marriage savings are exempt from division anyway. This time, if you can't recover it, it'll severely impact your life plans, so it's crucial. I have 3 bank accounts. Let's call them Account A, Account B, and Account C. Tuition fees are deposited into Account A. After the rent, utilities, and necessary expenses for the tutoring school are deducted, $2,000 is left as operating funds and withdrawn. About 70% goes into Account B for living expenses, which is managed by my wife. The remaining 30% goes into Account C for savings and big purchases like a car, which is also managed by my wife. For the past year, I've been depositing $6,000 into Account B and $3,000 into Account C on the 25th of every month. The account my wife withdrew the large sums from is Account C. I had been using an account from my single days as a savings account. So in the 2.5 years since we got married, there should have been around $100,000 plus my pre-marriage savings. But the current balance is just over $30,000. I haven't used it since I bought my wife a car, for around $13,000 right before we got married. The reason I can't get tough is 1. My sister-in-law's tuition. She was my student, so I know she's a hard worker. Honestly, my mind goes blank when I consider the possibility she might not be able to pay tuition because of alimony payments. As a solution, I'm thinking of offering to subsidize her tuition within the amount my wife pays. 2. Our daughter. Her blood type proves she's not my biological daughter, but I've been taking care of her for nearly 2 years. So my love for her hasn't changed even after finding that out. However, if I let my wife take her, I worry she'll be neglected. And I can't bear the thought of her biological father showing up and abusing her. Realistically, I wonder it'll be better if I raise her myself. But I can't get my thoughts in order. 3. Reputational damage. Both my wife's parents place and my tutoring school are within walking distance from my condo. My school isn't a college prep school, but a community-based one. If my wife and her family spread nasty rumors about me, it could jeopardize the whole operation. And another thing to report. Another affair partner has been identified, bringing the total to 5. To what extent have you been able to identify the affair partners? Do you have their names, addresses, family details, relationships with your wife? And workplaces? Yes, I have their information. I have their names, addresses, family details, and workplaces. Most of them are friends from before we got married, but one seems to be a compensated dating. I have evidence too. Photos and such. I'm planning to send them content-certified mails and bills for damages simultaneously on Friday. However, one is single and one is a student, so I don't know if they'll comply with my demands. And then the next day. Last night, after classes ended, I told everything to my mother and my younger brother and his wife, who I had already talked to a bit about the situation. And, while looking at the Account C statements and cross-referencing with my memory, I confirmed that my wife took a total of around $140,000. My lawyer advised me, in court, you'd likely only be able to get about $10,000 from each affair partner, but if they want to avoid a trial, they might pay a lot more. So the plan is to demand $50,000 from the employed ones, $30,000 from the unemployed ones, $20,000 from the student, and an additional $50,000 for the biological father of my daughter if he is identified. How can I put this? While searching the house, every time I found strange things, it brought tears to my eyes. When my wife threw tantrums or made selfish demands, I always gave in, thinking that as the older one, I should be the one to compromise. Was that a mistake? Should I have just pretended not to notice this time too? I feel like everything is my fault. But at the same time, when I found receipts for cooking classes, I got angry, thinking, in our 2.5 years of marriage, I can count on one hand the number of times she cooked for me. And each time I found a large amount of brand name accessories and bags, brands that even I know despite not being knowledgeable about that stuff. I couldn't help but yell, "Are you kidding me?" I wonder if it's my fault for creating an environment conducive to my wife's cheating, being away from home between 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. for my work. I feel like my mental state is really unstable, and I don't know what I'm doing. Today, together with my lawyer, I'm going to take steps to freeze my wife's secret account having a balance of $50,000 as an account possibly being used for criminal activities, to prevent her from withdrawing the money and running off. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have a talk with my father-in-law. To be blunt, your cheating wife probably intended to do that from the start when she married you. If there's any fault on your part, it's that you couldn't see through what kind of woman she was. Absolutely right. Having worked for about 10 years running a tutoring school in a somewhat unique and narrow environment, and having no experience dating women, I lacked the discernment of seeing through her. I'm keenly feeling that money can't buy experience. From her perspective, I was probably just a middle-aged convenient man with a bit of money. I tried to freeze my wife's account, but when I asked my brother who works at a bank, he said it would be difficult since the police haven't accepted a damage report. I showed this exchange to my lawyer and discussed it with him. He said if I want to thoroughly cut off her escape routes, there are ways to do it. And speed is of the essence. So starting tomorrow, I'm going to swiftly corner the affair partners. To be honest, at first I was reading it just for fun. But now I genuinely want you to have an amazing life. I don't know if it's because of the circumstances or your character. I sincerely want to support you. And then the next day, almost everything that needs to be done has been sorted out. So I'm leaving my daughter with my mother and going to the workplaces of the 3 married affair partners with my lawyer. Originally, the plan was to do this after my wife came back and we reached an agreement. But the evidence itself is solid, and if I wait until after meeting up with my wife, they might coordinate their stories and escape. So the plan has abruptly changed. Thank you all for your advice. I don't know what results my actions will bring, but I want to move forward without regrets. To be honest, I was wavering whether I should actually go through with it, but as I posted here and read everyone's opinions, I became convinced it's what I should do. Thank you. Good luck. We're waiting for your report. And then 4 days later, he comes back. Thank you for waiting. The general stuff were being decided from Thursday to Sunday, but to be honest, it's been emotionally tough. Regarding the affair partners, 3 of them agreed to pay the full amount, and the student agreed to pay $10,000. I can't give you all the details yet, so I'll just vent the gist of it to take my mind off things. On Saturday night, just before it turned to Sunday, I got a call from the security company saying the security at my school had been breached and there was an intruder. When I got to the school, there were already 2 police cars there, and the security staff were talking to the police. Curious onlookers from the neighborhood had gathered too. I was questioned by the police until dawn. The perpetrator had already been arrested. He was one of the affair partners I had been in a dispute with over alimony. It makes me want to cry that I have to maintain contact with this guy until the alimony is paid. Now I'm going to bill him for the repair costs and damages for what he destroyed. The divorce with my wife has been filed, but we're arguing over various things. I just delivered our demands, which is $30,000 in alimony, return of the embezzled $140,000, plus child support. But she countered with demands for half the equity in the condo, half the savings, $3,000 for monthly living expenses, and $2,000 per month in exchange for being allowed to raise our daughter. It's absurd. She hasn't even expressed words of apology. My father-in-law and sister-in-law were stunned, thinking that I loved this woman and worked hard for her sake up until now. Considering what kind of woman she turned out to be, I can't help but wonder what these 2.5 years were for. I'm leaving it all to my lawyer now and going to work. I want to file for divorce by my daughter's birthday on the 29th and celebrate it. In my wife's family, my father-in-law and sister-in-law are on my side, while my mother-in-law is on my wife's side. It's really gotten ugly with the family split like this. Demanding $2,000 a month in exchange for being allowed to raise your daughter is nonsensical. She seriously believes alimony is something women with no livelihood receive, so there's no need to pay it. My lawyer should be explaining the meaning of alimony to her this morning, but there's been no contact, so I assume she hasn't accepted it. She seems to genuinely believe she'll continue to receive living expenses even after divorce. And she apparently thinks a husband's money is his wife's money too, showing no signs of remorse. She seriously doesn't seem to know. My mother-in-law is a divorcee herself, so she should know these things, but to be honest, it seems impossible to make her understand in any language I know. So I'm counting on my lawyer and in-laws to persuade her. The daughter's biological father hasn't been identified? I haven't looked into it. My lawyer told me that identifying the biological father could complicate things like custody disputes if it goes to trial. My mother has also accepted the situation, so there was no point in identifying him and I called it off. By the way, what did she use all that money on? An estimated $20,000 at nightclubs, around $50,000 into her own account, about $40,000 to her mother, around $20,000 on brand name goods, and about $10,000 unaccounted for. I see why your mother-in-law is taking the wife's side. And then the next day, the direction of the divorce has been decided. First, regarding the $40,000 that went to my mother-in-law, my lawyer said, I have no intention of seeking repayment from your mother-in-law. It was your wife who stole it, and how she used it is not our concern. So we'll be seeking repayment from your wife, not mother-in-law. However, if there's any money left, please return it now, my lawyer asked her. Upon hearing that, even though she had been taking my wife's side, she said she would return the roughly $20,000 that remains this week. My wife also promised to return the $50,000 currently in her own account. So for my wife, we reduced the alimony from $30,000 to $20,000, plus the embezzled $140,000, which makes $160,000 in total. Of that, we're recovering $70,000 from my wife and mother-in-law this time, leaving a balance of $90,000. We're recognizing $30,000 that should have been saved up, plus the condo payments made after marriage, as asset division. That will be offset against the balance, leaving $60,000 for her to pay me. This is what the lawyer told me via email and such. For the rest, we need to decide on a payment method and other details, so I went to my in-laws' place after 10 p.m. with my lawyer. When we got there, it was a battlefield. At first, we were talking about her paying $500 per month for 10 years, but my lawyer balked at that, insisting the payments be completed within 5 years. But there's no way my wife can afford to pay $1,000 a month. So they were negotiating with my father-in-law subsidizing the payments or her digging into her savings. But then my wife said something to my sister-in-law like, leave college and find a job. Then you can put your tuition towards the repayments and divert some of your income too. My mother-in-law was all, yeah, which infuriated my father-in-law and sister-in-law. It was ugly. Since it's not a situation where we can intervene, my lawyer and I left. That's where things stand. I'm going to the bank now with my lawyer to receive the money from my wife and mother-in-law. To be honest, I'm deeply grateful to this lawyer. But I just want it to be over quickly. I don't want this personal issue to have a strange impact on my students. While it's not my place, I do want to help her sister if possible, but there's not much that can be done. Regarding my sister-in-law, I've told my father-in-law and her directly that I'll lend her money for tuition, interest-free and with no set repayment deadline. I've asked them not to mention this to my wife or mother-in-law. This isn't out of affection or sympathy for my sister-in-law as a relative. It's a calculated move to prevent weird rumors from spreading that the teacher ruined his students' college prospects. I haven't set a repayment deadline, so I don't know if I'll ever collect on it, but even if she defaults, I'll consider it a thank you for informing me about my wife's cheating. If I hadn't divorced now, there's a possibility she could have taken several times more money from me. So I'm thinking of it as a small price to pay as thanks. Regarding the lawyer insisting that payments be completed within 5 years, is he really on the level? I'm aware that realistically, it's impossible for my ex-wife to pay $1,000 a month. However, I was told the risk of her running off increases with a longer term. And I don't want to maintain contact with her for 10 years either, it's disgusting. She says she's going to sell her brand name goods and car, so once those are appraised, the payments should go down. What's the total alimony you got from the affair partners? You don't have to answer if you can't. Partner A is paying $50,000 in a lump sum at the end of this month. Partner B is paying $40,000 over 3 years. Partner C is paying $40,000 by the end of this year. Couldn't reach an agreement with Partner D. Already received $10,000 from Partner E. And then that afternoon. It was settled this morning. The lawyer was excellent, I'm so grateful. The brand name goods and car were appraised at around $12,000. My mother-in-law came up with $10,000 from cashing in insurance policies and such. My father-in-law got a loan of $10,000. My mother-in-law's parents provided $10,000. The remaining balance will be paid in monthly installments of $600 for about 2.5 years. I had already given up on child support, so I think I'll accept this as the final settlement. I told my wife to move her things out over the weekend. While she's doing that, I'm thinking of taking my daughter and mother on an overnight trip nearby to get away. Tomorrow, I'm going to receive the divorce papers and submit them. For a while, I was in this strange state where I couldn't tell if I was asleep or awake, but for now, I'm going to sleep until work and then give it my all again. Getting this settled in less than 10 days, from a point where I had no idea what to do, is thanks to posting here. Thank you. I have to say, based on the alimony amounts from the affair partners and such, your lawyer must be quite a slick one. At first, I thought getting even $20,000 to $30,000 would be great, but as I can't discuss here, there was evidence of acts that, while not illegal, were problematic. The affair partners wanted to avoid having that come out to their spouses, which is why the amounts ended up like this. I see, so the other side had circumstances that made it impossible for them to skimp on the payments. I hope you can have a peaceful life with your daughter. And then another week later, it ended in a way that closely aligned with our demands. The divorce papers have already been filed. Glad to hear it. Feel free to share more details if you'd like. If I had to nitpick, we reduced the outstanding amount my ex-wife has to pay to $15,000. I can't tell the reason for reducing it. The money already recovered, plus the alimony paid yesterday by 2 of the affair partners, slightly exceeds the amount embezzled from me. But factoring in the lawyer fees and the amount paid to the investigation company, I'm still in the red. As for the rest, it seems my ex-wife might face alimony demands from the wives of 2 of the affair partners. And my father-in-law and mother-in-law may even get divorced. Will your ex-wife be able to pay? I calculated an amount I thought she could realistically manage, but if she ends up having to pay alimony to the wives of the affair partners, it might be impossible after all. Will the second branch school be okay? And, at the risk of sounding crude, do you think your ex-sister-in-law already had some deep-seated resentment towards your ex-wife? Funding-wise, the issues have been cleared up for the second branch school, but to be honest, it's emotionally tough for me to start the preparations now. If the small stuff aren't sorted out by summer, I'm thinking of postponing it a year. As for my ex-wife and ex-sister-in-law, there was no blood relation to begin with, as they were each brought into the family by their respective parents' remarriage. So there may have been some kind of friction. But I don't intend to pry too deeply into that. My ex-sister-in-law will just go back to being my former student. What a speedy resolution. Well done. With that, we conclude the story of a man ensnared by an unbelievable woman. Given that it borders on marriage fraud, I hope the reporter doesn't blame himself for this.